Mark 3:7-19 title Why Him? In the previous passage, Jesus redefined the Sabbath. The Sabbath is a day of doing good works. By that definition, he healed a man with a paralyzed hand on the Sabbath. In response, the Pharisees and Sadducees, Herod's party, holding to the old interpretation, the Sabbath is a day of no work, conspired to kill Jesus. Conservatism fiercely resisted the truth, ultimately leading to Jesus' death. This resistance was rooted in the idol of their own making tradition. When Jesus challenged the traditions they had built, like the Tower of Babel, they accused him of blasphemy and sought to execute him. To them, tradition was equivalent to God. Tradition resisted truth and became an idol. Aware of this hostility, Jesus withdrew from the scene. In verse 7, Jesus withdrew with his disciples to the sea, and a great crowd followed him from Galilee. Jesus left town and went to the shore of Lake Galilee. He was like the person on the blacklist, out of town, yet followed by a massive crowd. He was healing all kinds of diseases, which made people astonished. His words carried a freedom, depth, and overwhelmingly touching quirkiness. People felt something deeply messianic about him. Without modern technology to record his teachings, people were compelled to go where he was, resulting in huge crowds wherever he appeared. In verse 8, great crowds came from Judea and Jerusalem, Idumea, beyond the Jordan, and from Tyre and Sidon. When they heard of his great works, Judea and Jerusalem were quite far from Galilee, and Idumea and the other side of the Jordan were even further. Tyre and Sidon were coastal cities in present-day Lebanon, requiring a 4-day journey on foot. Yet even people from these distant places heard of Jesus and came to see him. His great works included healing a man possessed by a demon, Peter's mother-in-law's fever, a man with paralyzed limbs, and others with various ailments. Those miracles had never been seen before, though we are only in the beginning of Mark chapter 3. The impact of Jesus' actions was already reverberating throughout Palestine. Verses 9-10, Jesus commanded his disciples to have a small boat ready to avoid the crowds, because he had healed so many, and those suffering from diseases were coming in droves to touch him. Lake Galilee lies 250 meters below sea level, and the shoreline creates a natural amphitheater effect. Jesus had his disciples prepare a boat by the shore, which he used as a pulpit to address the crowd. Verses 11-12, whenever unclean spirits saw him, they fell before him and cried out, "You are the Son of God." But Jesus warned them repeatedly not to reveal who he was. The spirits recognized Jesus and declared his identity, but he silenced them to prevent escalating the timeline toward his death, as there was still much to accomplish. Verse 13, he went up on a mountain and called those he wanted, and they came to him. This is when he chose his disciples. The setting is a mountain, a location traditionally used by Jews for sacred purposes, such as receiving the 10 Commandments. Mountains symbolized moments of divine significance. However, Jesus didn't call just anyone to be his disciple, but he chose whom he wanted. Not everyone who desired to be a disciple could be one. If Jesus did not choose them, they would not be a disciple. Today, discipleship is open to applications, and anyone can join, which is very different from Jesus' time, when charismatic authority allowed for selectiveness. Verses 14-15, he appointed the 12, so that they might be with him, and that he might send them out to preach, and that they might have authority to cast out demons. There were 3 purposes for the disciples. 1. Training, to be with him, living alongside Jesus, witnessing his teachings, miracles, and confrontations with the legalists. It was like an internship, where disciples shadowed the teacher, learning directly from his life. 2. Preaching, to send them out to preach. The term apostle comes from the Greek word apostolos, meaning one who is sent to, which comes from apostello, meaning to send to. A disciple is one who is sent to various places, with the key task of proclaiming the message. The Greek word for to evangelize is keruso, meaning to proclaim. Evangelism then was about making an announcement. Whoever had ears to hear would listen. Today, evangelism often focuses on persuasion and integration, but originally it was more of a unilateral proclamation. 3. Spiritual empowerment. To have authority to cast out demons. The disciples needed spiritual empowerment to carry out their mission, particularly in the charismatic context of that time. Verses 16 to 19. He appointed the 12, Simon to whom he gave the name Peter, James son of Zebedee, and his brother John, to whom he gave the name Boanerges, meaning sons of thunder, Andrew, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot, who betrayed him. Jesus gave Simon the name Peter, which was Roman word, meaning rock symbolizing stability. James and John were nicknamed sons of thunder for their fiery disposition. Lastly, we meet Judas Iscariot. Iscariot likely derived from the Hebrew term Iskarioth, which comes from is and Karioth, meaning men of Karioth, or the word related to scary meaning of dagger. Some zealots in Judaism, armed fighters, who sought to overthrow Roman regime, carried daggers. Judas' background hints at zealotry. This raises an important question. Did Jesus know Judas would betray him? If not, he can't be our Lord. If yes, this mystery invites reflection on Jesus' deeper intentions and the nature of his mission. Why did Jesus choose him as a disciple in the first entry?